Hey YouTube, I know it's been a while since I've uploaded, but I figure it's better to have a few videos where I talk about things that are important, at least to me, than a bunch of videos where I just ramble. So I promise to only make videos about things I care about to save you from watching a bunch of shitty videos for 2 or 3 good ones. And it saves me from getting burned out. There are people who want violent video games outlawed. They think that Halo turns kids into sociopaths. Now, I love video games. My current obsession, which has been my obsession for about 2 years, is the very aptly named Oblivion. I also really like Kingdom Hearts and Resident Evil and GTA. And none of these are what you'd call peaceful games. I mean, Kingdom Hearts is probably the least violent, but even then you run around killing creatures that are trying to eat your heart. But they don't make me violent. Actually, the game that makes me the angriest, the one game that has caused me to punch my system, is Dr. Robotnik's Beam Machine. It's a very violent game, as you can see. Now, I know what you're thinking, but Zydrake, you're not a kid. And you're right, but I was a kid when I punched the shit out of my Sega and made it my bitch. And as a kid, I played Mortal Kombat, Streets of Rage 1 and 2, and ToeJam and Earl, which I know doesn't seem violent to the casual observer, but there's a dude that tries to run you over with a lawnmower. And yet, I'm not a violent person, and my little sister played the same games from an even younger age, and she's even less violent than me. Kids know the difference between fantasy and reality for the most part. You can convince a kid that something is real when it's not, but convince is the key word. If children thought everything in every video game was real, then as a child I would have run around stealing gold rings because as long as I had one I couldn't be killed. But I didn't, and I doubt any of you did either. Okay, now for the part you're really here for, the opposing argument and why it's wrong. First-person shooters train you to kill, like flight simulators train you to fly a plane. You can't compare these two. There's a big difference between pushing the X button and firing a gun. Your controller doesn't recoil. Aiming a gun is much harder than aiming on Halo, and there's a big difference between watching pixels simulate death and actually killing someone. If this was true, after the amount of Oblivion and Guitar Hero I've played, I'd be great with a sword. And I'd be playing to sold-out crowds rather than making YouTube videos. Then there are fuck-offs like Jack Thompson, who blame GTA for school violence, like the shooting in Paducah, Kentucky. This is from Thompson's webpage. Thompson seems especially worried about the games Grand Theft Auto and Doom, which he holds responsible for both the Paducah and Columbine shootings. Also from Thompson's page, and this is quoted from CNN, Heath High School's principal said that the boys' school essays and short stories revealed that he felt weak and picked on. Principal Bill Bonds says Carneal, the shooter in Paducah, apparently had been teased all of his life and just struck out in anger at the world. People who knew Carneal described him as physically small and emotionally immature, but said he had been a good student with no serious discipline problems. Carneal felt weak and picked on. He had been teased all of his life. So what's more likely? A. Carneal played GTA and it made him so crazy that he shot up his school. Or B. Carneal felt weak, hated the world because he was constantly tormented at school and wanted to hurt someone as much as he had been hurt. He wanted to feel strong and in control. Now, if you know anything about human psychology, you know that B is accurate. He felt weak, hurt, angry, and wanted someone to pay. A gun is the great equalizer. GTA didn't make him homicidal. Emotional problems come out with the little pricks and bitches that tormented him that made him feel so horrible that the only way he saw to make himself feel better was to take the lives of his classmates made him homicidal, not GTA. School violence isn't new, and it isn't always because someone was picked on, and it isn't always done with a gun. This is from Time magazine. In the forenoon of a blazing August day, a blonde, husky young man strolled into a hardware store in Austin, Texas, and asked for several boxes of rifle ammunition. As he calmly wrote a check in payment, the clerk inquired with friendly curiosity what all the ammunition was for. To shoot some pigs, he replied. At that time, the answer seemed innocent enough, for wild pigs still abound not far from the capital. The horror of its intent only became obvious a few hours later when the customer, a student of architectural engineering at the University of Texas, seized his grisly fame as the perpetrator of the worst mass murder in recent U.S. history. He killed 13 people and wounded 31, and it was later found out he killed his wife and mother. He shot a total of 46 people, and I can guarantee this shooter never played GTA or any other video games. The shooter was Charles Joseph Whitman, and this shooting took place in 1966. Here's another one. Andrew Cahoe killed 44 people. 38 of them grade school children and 7 adults, and injured 58 at Bath Consolidated School in Bath Township, Michigan. He had never played a video game since this took place in 1927, and this troubled kid was 55 years old and upset by a property tax that had been levied to fund the construction of the school building. So what's the point of listing these? There are always sociopaths. There will always be sick fucks who decide that whatever their problem is, it can be solved by killing innocent people. But hey, I'm no expert. Let's see what the scientists have to say. Grand Theft Childhood, The Surprising Truth About Violent Video Games and What Parents Can Do is a book by Lawrence Kuttner, Ph.D., and Cheryl K. Olson, SCD. They conducted a survey to find if there is a correlation between violent video games and childhood violence, and this is what they found. There is a correlation between violent video games and some common childhood problems. Boys who played any mature-rated game a lot had twice the risk of certain aggressive behaviors or school problems at least once during the past year, compared to boys who played games with lower average age ratings. They also found that there are creative, social, and emotional benefits from video game play, even violent games, and they are used by many children to relieve stress and get out anger. So what did they have to say about violent video games? There's a quote. Focusing on such easy but minor targets as violent video games causes parents, social activists, and public policymakers to ignore the much more powerful and significant causes of youth violence that have already been well established, including a range of social, behavioral, economic, biological, and mental health factors. Kuttner went on to say you'll sometimes see kids coming out of an action movie making kung fu moves against one another, but that doesn't mean they're going to do that against a sweet little old lady down the street. Kuttner and Olson noted that although some studies have claimed to show a link between video games and violent or aggressive behavior, most research in that area is flawed. Some studies look at vintage arcade games that don't remotely resemble modern video games. Some studies follow the behavior of only a few dozen children, and many of the studies don't define what constitutes violent or aggressive behavior. So what have we learned today? Violent video games are not okay for all children. You have to know your children. But if you have a sweet kid with no real issues, it's not going to turn them into a killing machine. If your child is violent and aggressive, don't let them play games where they kill shit. Take the controller away and put them on a shrink's couch. If your child is average without psycho tendencies, Halo isn't going to make them shoot you in your sleep. So remember, talk to your children. Find out if they're being tormented at school, if they are angry often, and how they feel about meatloaf. 10 minutes now could save your child 20 to life in the future, and save countless parents from having to go through the worst pain in the world.